Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rash's World. Today we have a special guest. We have Aymie Daniels. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for inviting me here. I'm excited to be here.
For sure. Thanks for coming. And so the first question is usually the toughest, but then as we go along, it's going to get easier. How would you briefly describe yourself to our audience here?
How would I briefly describe
Yeah.
myself?
But in any way you see fit.
Okay. I think that I'm an adventurer. I'm somebody that asks questions. So I never just take things at face value. I'm a why kind of person. Um,
And why are you like that?
I think that that is just it's ingrained in me. So from the time that I was little, my mom said that it made things difficult. That she would pick out my sister's clothes and she would be happy to wear with whatever my mom gave her. And I was always fighting about what I wanted to wear. And, so I had a strong opinion about things.
Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it has benefited me, though, in life, the asking of questions, especially in the scenario that we're about to discuss.
And yeah, great segue. Awesome. So your book is An American Awakening, the Interdependent Relationship of Spirituality and Mental Health. And so the various things that stand out here, and I think like maybe just like awakening. What does that mean to you and why is it necessary? And I think it's obvious we need some sort of awakening here. So what does that
Mhm.
represent to you?
So, awakening to me means leveling up in consciousness.
Mhm.
So, really, you're transcending where it's very self-centered, the consciousness, and it's about me, and you think that that is your true identity. The awakening, of course, is then where you connect with Source and have the realization that we are Source and everyone is Source. So, that's what awakening means to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what would source be? Is that basically kind of flexible, different things like
Well, for me,
higher
I would,
self, or what would
yeah.
that be? Yeah,
I think that, people have the liberty to go with whatever they want on that because nobody knows.
exactly. I
That's
like
what
the
it comes
answer.
down to.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I think that it is consciousness, love, light, creativity. Would probably pretty well sum it up.
Mhm.
But of course, it's much, much more than that. It's
Mhm.
something that is pretty hard to put into words, which is why spiritually transformative experiences, like we discuss in the book, there is like what do they call it? Ineffable or like
Yes,
unexplainable.
yes.
Yeah, so
Like,
so many people have the experiences, and then the issue is you can't explain
yes.
it.
Yes, that makes it very difficult. And that's what they say
Yeah.
about the Tao too. Like the Tao that you can explain is not the real Tao, you know? It's like if you can
Mhm.
explain it, then it's not it. But there's on a
Yeah.
different level, you can experience it. And so some of it has been also your own insights, perhaps your own struggles and like leading to things. What would you like to share with us here of what brought you to write this book? What drove you to do so?
Well, I finally reached a point where I could. So I've been on this, quite honestly, a metaphysical adventure that kind of picking up pieces. So the book is you going on that journey with me. From the very early years where it would have been considered psychosis and there was substance abuse and it was just darkness. I had no idea what was happening to me. It felt spiritual. That was all
Mhm.
that I could say is this feels like something profound.
Mhm.
And then we go through and I gather up all these different pieces. And finally, I'm figuring out what this is. So there's many different phases of that. And it happened. I've heard awakening described as an unfolding. So it's not that you're asleep and then you're awake. Done deal.
Mhm.
It
Mhm. I
was
agree
very
with that.
much an unfolding process.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that, one day I just reached the highest level. Well, that may have been so, but I didn't stay there. And it was
Yeah.
confusing. And that's
Yeah.
where the Messiah, where you
Yeah.
become the one.
Yeah.
I think when you go from 0 to 100 with some of those experiences, that's where, the delusions and the misinterpretations of what happening come in.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and I think it's often enlightenment the way it's presented. It's like suddenly it's like Satori and like the Zen Buddhism. It's like, oh, you get it all, and suddenly everything makes sense. And it's like,
yeah.
and you might have moments like that, but then it goes back to normal, right? So it's
Mhm.
like I like the idea of the process. Right? It's like you building towards it, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's something that it's like healing too. I think there's like I thought about that, and this is healing is something I'm very interested in. But there's no point where you say, okay, now I'm completely healed, right? There's like this process continues. Now I'm operating on a higher level. I'm things that maybe upset me before don't, because again, I kind of managed to raise my level where it's like, wait a minute, this is actually not important, or this, why do I worry about this? It's not a big deal. And it's but it takes that experience to get there. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And as a finance professional,
Mhm.
I compare it to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So if you look at the Dow from, I think it started late 1800s, maybe like 1894 or 95, somewhere around there,
Mhm.
and you do an overall view of it,
Mhm.
the fluctuations like day to day, year over year, so it's up and it's down, but when you're zoomed out, it's like this. So to me, that was the awakening experience
I
that
like that. That's interesting. I
yeah.
never thought of it in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, working in finance, I look at it and I'm like, that is what awakening feels like to me.
And that's seeing the big picture, because like when especially when you're suffering, you're going through a difficult time, then
Hmm.
I can relate to that. You don't see anything else. That's the tunnel vision. And you just want to like say, I hope I get out of this tunnel. But then
Yeah.
you realize like this was actually in many cases so beneficial in like driving you forward. And I see always the other side of the coin. Yeah, suffering is horrible and we don't want it. Of course not. But then that's when the biggest lessons come. And in a way, that's really necessary. Otherwise, we wouldn't advance and we wouldn't look for spiritual enlightenment and so on, because we are suffering. That's part of it.
Yes, I believe that as well. Yeah.
And those have been the biggest lessons too. And so the question why I agree with, like we can also look at why, but some people get stuck in the why me. And I think that is kind of makes you a bit stagnant, where you don't really like go further and just like go that path and see where it takes you too.
Yeah, I definitely had that. Why me? There, you'll
Yeah,
see it in the book if you whoever reads it.
yeah,
Where I was in rehab, so there was a period of
yeah.
substance abuse during the really early phase of awakening when it was very turbulent. And when I was in rehab, and everything had left my system, and I was there, I was so angry with that
Mhm.
question.
Yes.
Why me? Like, why is
Yeah.
this happening to me? Because I didn't feel like I was doing anything different. Like I'm looking around, I'm behaving the same way as the people around me. But I was just having malfunction
Mhm,
to a very high degree.
mhm,
So I definitely passed through that. Well,
mhm.
I mean, and maybe it's just a part of the process. I had to stew there for a minute,
Yeah,
but I
exactly.
did eventually get through it. And I think that for many people that I've talked to, you appreciate it, the awakening, because you live differently and you
Yeah.
look at things differently. So even though it is often turbulent and there is that pain, there, what is it, direct proportion. You
Mhm,
don't know joy without the pain.
mhm,
So I
mhm.
think that for many of us that we feel that in the end it's beneficial, but of course not that fun when you're going through it.
But it's those epiphanies that I find fascinating, and it's not I'm not really sure where it comes from, because you have your daily life and your grind and so on, and suddenly it's like this thought out of nowhere pops up, and it's like it's really like changes your perspective. It's liberating. It's wonderful, and
Yeah.
so that is quite amazing when we get that. So it's not enlightenment, but it's like, oh no, now I know I have to change things. And we look for always, like they say, be the best version of yourself, which is something I disagree with generally, because it's like I'm fine the way I am. But there are like certain decisions where we can choose more wisely. We can choose one that's not just based on our instinct, our reaction, like being on the defensive, but something that's looks at the big picture, that has a different view. And that is what I'm aiming for daily life.
Ooh, I have a part in my book. It's one of my favorite parts is where I discover the law of accountability.
Let's hear it.
And I list out the two choices
Mhm,
of whether I was being accountable or if I was just reacting unconsciously and what
mhm,
I could see. And this was in a really like hairy part of the awakening. I was hanging out with a guy that was doing heroin, and he had gone into my car and stole my money. So it was a
Oh my
really
God.
dark phase.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but I wasn't mad. Like when I discovered that he had done that, I wasn't angry because I could see myself. Like I could
Yeah.
see what the part that I played in that. So I was very accountable for my part, which of course empowered me to make different decisions, which led me in a different route.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It takes you out of that why me mentality, exactly, because then you accept some of it, right? And it's again
yeah,
accountable. Like I think acceptance also, like once I realize like I'm gonna accept everything. I'm gonna just accept it. It doesn't mean that one agrees with it. It's just like accepting the situation, and then that frees you up. And then you can
yeah,
choose a different path. And we have choice. I think that's very important, that in many ways we
very
have
important.
a will and a choice to get ourselves into trouble, but also to get ourselves out of it, right? Goes both ways.
True, true.
So what
Yeah.
do you think is the problem? I mean, it says you're part of the American Association of Drugless Practitioners, and I really like that because like I'm not against drugs or medication or anything, but I think there is a better way, and I think in many ways, like today's society, with people just become overprescribed with things,
Yes.
where one that a more again holistic method would be so much more useful. And it's not just treating the symptoms, it's actually leading to that awakening. And I find like when you just take drugs, of course it's necessary sometimes, but when you do that, it's kind of like you miss out on that because you're
Yeah.
not figuring things out. You're not trying to like solve the issues. It just puts you in a kind of like perhaps zombie state. And that's I don't think that's healthy for our psyche, especially.
Yeah. I definitely like the holistic route. It's the route that I went. I took very little medication, but I
Mhm.
also did drugs, so there's
Mhm.
that, one or the other. But I think the reason I'm kind of happy that I went that route is because um, I was never led to believe that that was the answer because I met many people in similar circumstance that, believed they had a genetic issue or a chemical imbalance and needed drugs for the remainder of
Mhm.
their life.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't have that, because it was a couple years I was an addict, and then I
Mhm.
came out and I was better and I wasn't on anything.
Mhm.
So there was kind of the upside of that. But I mean, my path was messy. I would never recommend like this is the exact path to take, and there was some luck involved in there as well, being
Yeah.
able to come out the other side.
Yeah.
But I absolutely believe in the holistic. I think not only, but it leads us to a better life. So I think there's extra work involved, right? When we take the holistic path,
Mhm.
but it's also more fulfilling.
Mhm.
I also do the disclaimer is not everybody has the luxury to do that. Like
Yes.
I was able to, as a, young woman, not married, did not have children, I explored non-ordinary states of consciousness. When I had that happen, like I explored it.
Mhm.
My comparison, if I have three kids at home, like waiting for me to put dinner on the table, it's probably not an option.
Mhm.
I'm big on choice.
Mhm.
People choosing the best path for themselves. It's not a one fits all or one size fits all. We all have very different lives. So I really like all the options, transparent information, all the options available, show success stories of the non-pharma variety, you know, because it's not really out there. Like as far as at work, I attempted to talk to our DEI people, and they sent me to a disabilities group and then wouldn't return my calls.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and I'm like, but I'm not disabled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they just made that assumption and they were uncomfortable with me not fitting, like the story that they've been told.
Mhm.
So there's definitely pharmaceutical companies are very powerful in
Yeah.
America for sure. I'm probably in other parts of the world as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
So there's that. I always follow that money trail. Like who's
Yeah.
benefiting from that story.
Yeah.
So that's
Exactly. Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah,
problem.
that's
Yeah.
important. I mean, I'm also not against the other kinds of drugs, I think.
Mhm.
But more like as a maybe as something like a glimpse of something, because for me that was like, oh, okay, I see things differently now. But not getting hooked on that. So I'm saying, okay, now I want my ordinary life to reach that state without taking
Okay.
anything, right? So that's
You
been the
think
inspiration.
psychedelics or
Psychedelics mainly, I'm
okay.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is possible. It is possible. It's just like and that's I want that to be my regular state, which I'm still working on. Yeah, it's
What
a
is
lot
it?
of
Psilocybin or what was
yes,
the okay.
yes,
All
and
right.
LSD as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that when I was young. At some point I just realized I don't I'm working to stay grounded.
Mhm.
So I
That is
don't
good.
want, yeah, like I don't want to take something to bring me out.
Yeah.
So I think I spent a great amount of time there. I barely made it back. It was a decision,
Yeah.
that like
Yeah.
I'm going to return to Earth and live there now. But I, for
Yeah.
quite some time was, I was way, way like high, not being high, but
Hmm.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, very far out there. So,
Yeah. Yeah, staying grounded is actually difficult for me, so that's why
yeah.
that's not ideal. But what about the current like issues we're having like in society too, like around the world, but also like in the US specifically with like anxiety and depression and those kind of issues that people have. And in my
Yeah.
view, in many cases, it seems that there's lack of spirituality, and again, whatever that means to that person, there's lack of
Mhm.
belonging to something, to a group, or to even like an idea that is healthy, right? Something that transcends ourselves in a positive way. And do you think, and you mentioning the term that Graf made of a spiritual emergency, and he also used sometimes uses emergence for that, like spirituality to gain its rightful place. And in the mental health professions, it's kind of going in, but there's always this kind of hesitation to embrace anything that has to do with religion or spirituality, which I find very unfortunate, actually.
Yeah. I don't even look at it as religious. I was atheist when the whole thing started.
Hmm.
Very black and white thinker.
Hmm.
So to me, the spiritual aspect, it's inherent, right? So it's just a part of all of us. So
Hmm.
if we don't bring it into the mix, we will be lacking. We're going to continue to have problems. I think it's so inherent that we don't need to call it that. Like we
Okay,
can
yeah, I
talk
like that.
about,
Yeah,
like mind, emotions, consciousness. It's part of our spirituality, but the word doesn't even necessarily need to be used
yeah.
if we're talking about that because it's just part of who we are. So that's my feeling.
And there are these wacky things that happen and in our life that make no sense. And there's like rationally, you can't explain it. And I find it fascinating how people are still trying, right? They're trying to explain something that you cannot explain in with any logic, right? But they try their best. But it's easier not to fight that and accept there is more things that we don't see. And there are other forces there but you mentioned luck, and perhaps that could be also guidance, where like, hey, I'm just gonna show you this direction, but it's up to you to embrace it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like an explanation. It doesn't mean it has to be correct. I
yeah.
get what you're saying about the
But you want
letting.
a rational explanation, or
No,
you'd be
not
okay with, yeah,
necessarily, but I like to not, I mean, we don't have to get into the, real details of it, but I want a general, like overall feel for what's going on. I think like this psychiatrist, Dr. Ian McGillichrist, I
yeah.
think that he's got it. And now
Cool.
I'm going to say that I found him after I'd already come up with this.
Okay,
So what is
good.
it when you find something that
Yeah,
it's reinforcing what you already believe.
yeah.
So what he said is that, and it's super interesting documentary for anybody interested, but it's The Divided Brain. I think it's on Vimeo. It's shown up on some other platforms now.
Mhm.
But it talks about how throughout history, what we've done is we've started with like a whole brain processing. We watch the flourishing of society, but slowly but surely, we lean more and more to left brain processing.
Mhm.
And then there's an eventual collapse of society. Like it's happened, he named three times throughout history. and he could observe it. He would examine the art of the time, and you can tell like what kind of processing
Hmm.
is producing
Hmm.
this art.
Interesting. Yeah.
That was my feeling on transformation. So I felt that what happened was that I was way far in ego, like left brain, to the imbalance. So what happened, it was the corrective mechanism, right?
Hmm.
So it was coming about the spiritual aspect that a lot they'll label it mania or schizophrenia or
Hmm.
kundalini if you're more friendly to it, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but it was the corrective mechanism. So in mainstream medicine, a lot of times we're taking medications, we're medicating away something that is correcting the imbalance. You know, so it leaves you in dysfunction. So now you got a lifelong, you know, disease.
Okay.
So I think that my luck or, you know, guidance or whatever,
Hmm. Hmm.
with
Yeah.
that, I went through it. You know, I went through it and the corrective mechanism came in, it did its thing. I became very spiritual, you know, because
Hmm.
it was direct experience, very powerful.
Hmm.
And then you're right, though, you can't explain it.
Hmm.
Some of those things, like I can't explain it, you know, but uh, I certainly have sought literature to
Yeah.
reinforce, you know, what I saw and what I experienced. So,
Yeah,
but
and so for me, it's like as something weird happens, and I go, "Oh my God, this is weird." But then I pretty much stop there because it's like I think it's kind of like trying to figure it out why and so on can lead me in a different direction.
how about weird cool,
Weird,
right?
cool.
Like
I like that. I'll add
cool.
the cool to it. Yeah. And that's the thing. But the thing that's very important too is to always have hope, I think. And that comes through our conversation here and also through your book, where you want that to preserve that no matter what. I mean, it's
Yes.
hard. It's very difficult, but it
Oh,
needs
you
to
hit the
be
nail on the
always
head there. You hit the nail
yeah,
on the head. You really did with the message.
yeah,
Is that holding on to that.
yeah.
Like even because I feel that life is ups and downs. Like that's what it is. It's what it's meant to be.
Hmm.
And sometimes people, you know, they want to check out on a down. And I
Hmm.
think like the hope, like holding on to that hope and knowing that like your best chapters might be ahead of you. You know, don't check out on a down chapter.
Yes, yes, no,
You know,
definitely. And it, like unexpectedly, especially when you just sometimes it's the point where you just, okay, I'm about to give up, but I won't and give it one last try. And that's the one that works out then, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do have, I've lost several people to suicide, and I do talk about that in the book.
Yes.
Several real close, important people, and then, you know, other people that I've known a little more at a distance, but very sad. And I often think of them and I wonder, you know, what their today would be like had they been able to hold on and hold on to that hope. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. Because that's the thing. We don't know the future, and that's the
Oh,
like there's something good waiting for you, right? I think it's always
yeah.
like it's always important to have an optimistic outlook. I mean, I'm against positive thinking of like framing everything or sugarcoating them and framing it in a good
Yeah.
thing. There's some bad stuff happening. I think we have to be realistic. But the hope has to be always there that things
Yes.
will get better no matter what the circumstances are. And we see it around the world with events that are happening, and then there's like it seems there's no way out, but there always is. You know, we've moved on, we're still alive, you know, and we will be. And so I think that's really important to not fall into too much to the darkness, the pessimism that exists in different levels nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
And also, I think one thing that's very important that you are also giving yourself as an example, which takes a lot of courage, but it also gives other people hope. And by stating that, so we feel that we're not alone with the struggles, with what we're going through, and that there is a light out of the tunnel. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that's also very important for doing that. And not only, I mean, we talk about stigma being stigmatized. I think it's again beyond that, where we just like forget about the stigma and let's look at it in a different way.
Yeah, I don't necessarily love the, you know, diagnostic or the labeling system that we have. I don't think it's helpful and I don't think it's healing language. You
Hmm.
know, there's so many different takes on our psychology.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like we could really bump up what we're doing over in the mental
Yeah,
health care
yeah,
system. It's just, it was 100% not helpful. I was not directly harmed. I would like to say that. There was no direct harm,
yeah.
but indirectly, you know, because of the veil of what we've created, what people think about what I went through. their belief of whether or not you can recover. So it's funny because by 26, I had really come out the other side of the real bad stuff. But it wasn't really over yet because that's when I realized like this is not, I think, wow, like I went through this spiritual awakening. I had these amazing experiences. No, these people think, that you're mentally ill. So it wasn't great. I had to go to jobs and be really careful about what I said and feel like I was filtering a lot out,
Mhm.
and so that's very painful, I think,
Yeah.
because my comparison is like being like LGBTQ and living a pretend life so society can accept you.
Yeah.
My feeling too about, the labels and schizophrenia, and a lot of times like it's metaphysical, sensitive people that are being completely mishandled and injured.
Mhm.
And same thing like they did with LGBTQ people. Same exact thing where they conversion therapy, like, we're
Oh
gonna
my
we're
God.
gonna
Yeah.
set you
Yeah.
straight. So
Yeah.
I think they've taken these people and really you're just destroying them. So
Yeah.
and society too. Society is not a great place if you're ultra sensitive, you know, connected to the outer
Yeah.
realms.
And someone who fascinates me is Viktor Frankl of like, the search for meaning and also like surviving the concentration camp. But then his issue was also not like once he was out, of course, but it didn't end there because the thing was what came after, where you actually like have to deal with all the stuff that happened to you previously, like process it, and then
Yeah.
try to live a life, a normal life, like other people who don't understand what you went through. So again, what you're saying, that kind of I think of that, where we find it hard to be yourself. And I think like this is something we say in society, and that's like our big like advice, like to just be yourself. First of all, we don't say how to do it, how to go
Yeah.
about. I mean, it's not as simple as that. And secondly, when you are yourself, we don't accept you because
No.
again, you are a bit kooky or you're a bit different from others. And so I
Yeah.
find that also in a way hypocritical, where it's like, yeah, be yourself, but no, just be the way I want you to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Oprah Winfrey, by the way, but she always says like speak your truth, and I'm like,
That
well,
depends.
yeah, I know. I'm like, well, I
I've
did
done that and it hasn't worked out.
no, it didn't work out. I
Yeah.
think that for me, it comes down to reaching a point where I can create my own business, and which I've done now, and just be able to speak. There's nobody that I'm answering to. There's no one I have to be concerned about, like if I am who I am I going to be able to keep this job? But everybody doesn't have that luxury. There
Yeah.
just are things that I am lucky to have. Like I didn't have, like all the responsibilities and was able to explore and that other people are living in society, I think the same way that I did after it happened, where
Mhm.
you just don't talk. Like
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
not going to understand. It's isolating. Now I'm really lucky to be connected with, a lot of leaders, like Sean Blackwell, who wrote Bipolar or Waking Up, or Catherine Lucas, the Case of Spiritual Emergency. People that have experienced this, they've come out the
Yeah.
other side, they're helping other people. I've got quite a number of friends that have spiritual emergency stories. So there's no big explanation that I have to give them. They know, and
Yeah.
they're living it too, so it feels good to have those connections.
The thing is, some will know, some understand, and
Mhm.
many won't. And that's why I have to be okay with that. Where it's like, okay,
Yeah,
it's like it's fine. Now, if you don't
yeah.
accept it, that's fine. And just focus. And there are some who do, right? And but you do need to open up. You do need to talk about it for to have that connection. And then you go, wait, yeah, that applies to me too. And let's talk about your business. So, profit source. What do you do? How did it come about as well? And yeah, anything you'd like to share with us?
Okay, yeah. So I created Profit Source basically as the business side to the book. So
Hmm.
when it comes to the end of the book, it's where I have an experience that leads me to finally give myself permission, is how I word it, to be me. That I'm going to get to be me now. And a
Yeah.
big part of my early years, it's kind of a play on. was where I was in the profit delusion. It was my very favorite one. I loved it. And then finally, made my way out of it. But that's how, and I've met a number of people where the Messiah complex, or,
Mhm.
a lot of people that have those real powerful experiences, there's a moment where you think, like, whoa, I am the one. So
Yeah.
that's the name Profit Source, but it's going to be the teaching side. So I'm creating virtual classes right now. I hope to do in-person teaching. There's a little bit of swag, like tees and hats type thing. And then also like wellness products.
Mhm.
And then of course the book. So
Mhm.
yeah, I want to take it on the road and hopefully help people. So the book itself outlines the healing process, which I do believe is repeatable. So
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, great. And the book again is An American Awakening, the
oh,
Interdependent Relationship of Spirituality and Mental Health. Yes.
will I present it?
Beautiful. And yeah, so best of luck with that. And thank you, Aymie Daniels, for being on A Rush as well. It's such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me here.